Hi everyone, we're in the Gospel of John, chapter 6 right now. John chapter 6, the famous true bread of life, the bread of life chapter in the New Testament. And there is that very famous story of the feeding of the 10,000 plus, with all the women and children included. The feeding of the 5,000 really should be called the feeding of the 10,000 plus. And in Korean, it's actually called the feeding of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Where do we get the 5 loaves and 2 fish? That's what was used to feed the multitude. And where did they get the 5 loaves and 2 fish? We're only told in the book of John. In the other Gospels, this story is contained there too. But only in the book of John, we are told that a little boy offered up his lunchbox. Everything he had in that lunchbox, which is every indication of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. These loaves were not just it's probably something that was given to the boy for him to eat and be satisfied. He took it and offered it up to Jesus. And I say that he offered it up voluntarily because Andrew, who found it, I don't think he looked at that lunchbox and said, "Give it here." That's not what happened here. Because when he brings it to Jesus, Andrew says to Jesus, "What is this among so many people? Who's going to be able to eat anything from this? Be satisfied at all?" Jesus takes it, feeds the multitude. Feeds the multitude. This is the question I want to ask you. In the light of who Jesus is, what kind of response does he deserve from us? What kind of response does he deserve from us? You might say that the crowds made the right response, because later on in the chapter, they say they want to make him king. But Jesus saw what they were trying to do, and he didn't embrace it. He took off. He said, "I'm going to have my QT with my Heavenly Father," went into a mountain to have his QT. What did they get wrong? What they got wrong is they didn't see him for who he really is. Immediately after this story, we find him walking on the water. Walking on the water. Who does that? Today we might say a very good surfer would do that. No. In the Bible, consistently, it is God who rides on the waves of the storm. It's Jesus. Jesus is Jehovah God of the Old Testament, no matter what our Jehovah's Witnesses friends would say. Jesus is the God of the Old Testament who calms the storm, who walks upon the wind. Walks upon and rules the wind. So this is who Jesus is. But that's not what they were looking to do. They were looking for an earthly political king who would bring in the earthly kingdom. It was a kingdom that is radically relocated to this world. And they were fixated on the physical food that Jesus provided. And they couldn't see that Jesus was the true eternal bread who gives eternal satisfaction. They sought him for temporary satisfaction. That's why later on, when it turns out that Jesus was not all that they thought he was going to be, they leave. They didn't recognize him for who he truly was. Not just some earthly king, but the eternal heavenly king. Not just some temporarily satisfying bread, but the eternally satisfying and pleasure-giving bread of life. One of your questions says, how does the bread of life compared to the bread that they ate that day? The answer is there's no comparison. In the light of the fact that Jesus is the great I am who walks upon the sea to you and me to beat for us our true bread of life, how should we respond? Offer up our lunchbox. He doesn't expect a lot, just all that you are, all that you have. And I want to say to you, in the light of who Jesus is, that's the only right response. Let's begin there. Blessings to you.